Just to clarify things, I am a staunch advocate against child trafficking. Like, I do not actively promote child trafficking. Just get it out of the way. My speech will talk about the 5 pathways to happiness that I found through adversity. And the best way to go about it, I guess, is to begin with a narrative, because I like telling stories, you know. Wow, that's a nice picture of me. So that's my name. Where will I start? A forum like this in the past, like when you were not born yet, a lot of you at least, or at least during the martial law, wouldn't have been possible without either a government crackdown or heavy censorship. So that's where my narrative really begins. During the time of the martial law, when the students here weren't born yet, some teachers were already born, and definitely almost all the administrators were already born. There was a time of relative darkness in Philippine society where it was very hard to find any semblance of joy or happiness or freedom in many parts of the country. And in that instance, young people started becoming angry and started going to different means to find ways to speak and be heard. There was a lady in the mountains when she was 16 who was doing catechism to farmers, who was eventually cracked down by the government and was forced to go underground and became a commander of the New People's Army. And she became known as Commander Liway. She married a man who was also a commander named Commander Toto. When she was pregnant with her second child, she got into an encounter, which at that point in time meant a running gun battle with the forces of the military. 5 of her closest friends, 2 of them new recruits, died on the spot trying to save her life. One of her closest friend, Berto, actually dug a hole in the ground so she can put her 7-month pregnant belly into the ground so she won't get killed. But the order was simple: eliminate everyone. But some military personnel, either by providence or by sheer luck, decided not to follow orders and let the pregnant woman survive with her husband who was shot at the foot. And in tribute for her fallen combatants and her fallen allies, she decided to name her child Dakip, from the Tagalog word that means capture. However, on the day of the baptism, the priest wouldn't baptize the child. So they named the child Kip, in tribute of all the men who sacrificed their lives so that I could be here today. This was my home for 4 years. This was the prison camp called Camp Delgado. That's the CNN crew covering it. The small room you see in the right is where 20 families slept. This was the hallway where we passed through every day escorted by guards. And for 4 years of my life, that was home. Now, my parents decided that their kids shouldn't feel like they were in jail, even though they were actually in jail. Because my sister was born 2 years later. Her name is Malaya. So there's some unfairness there, you know. Her name is like Malaya. I'm like, Dakip, it's not fair. But whatever. My mom would carry me up that tree you see there and show me the world outside. It's not much. It's a patch of empty road in the middle of an empty forest, and she would tell me legends. Legends of things like rivers, cars, starlights, picnics, things that I did not experience as a child and didn't think I'd ever experience as an adult. Then the people power revolution came, and we were eventually freed. 2 decades later, I came back to the same place and asked myself, why wasn't I traumatized? Why didn't I come out of that experience shivering, angry, mad at society? Then I saw my vandalism on the wall. I wrote on the wall of the room, thanks to this room, love us. That's when I first realized that one of the key components I had through adversity, one of the key components to happiness that I've had through adversity is gratitude. And if I didn't have gratitude as a child, no matter how bad my situation was, I would have probably written something much meaner, and I could probably show it here, right? When we left the prison cell, we thought that our situation was pretty bad. But as we grew older, we realized that, in fact, people have it much worse. While our freedom was taken away and it became the most valuable commodity I had, And my mom taught me that someday I would be able to run through open spaces. And that's the first thing I did. I ran a lot, annoyingly, in fact. I discovered that, well, there was still some space for me to be happy in that place. A lot of people don't have that luxury. So we've decided to fight that evil. And it's a fight that we're still fighting. My day job is not a debate coach. My day job is fighting human trafficking. Human trafficking, for those who don't know it, is the illegal trade of human beings for the purpose of exploitation, prostitution, servitude, and forced labor. It's a remnant of the age-old slavery. It's one of the biggest industries in the world, and over 100,000 Filipinos are trafficked every year. Under our noses, in the ships where we ride, in the planes that we board, and in the buses that we ride in. And those who recruit them, half of them are relatives, teachers, community leaders, in some Southeast Asian countries, monks. So it's people you know that tend to recruit you towards human trafficking. And we've been fighting this battle for so long. Over the years, our organization, Visayan Forum, was able to help 70,000 potential victims of human trafficking, and have actually sheltered and assisted 17,000 victims of human trafficking. That's why we probably need laughter therapy there, you know. You're invited to come and help our victims. And we've had a lot of failures along the way. That much I'm willing to admit. One of my closest friends when I was starting out as a child advocate when I was 13 was a 12-year-old child laborer in Davao. Her name, I'm not going to reveal her name, but eventually she traveled with me all around the world and talked about it, you know, had the convention passed. We were so successful. When she became 16, a comic book was made about her life. And it made millions in donations for the organization that featured her. And she got a copy of the comic book, nothing else. She became disappointed with the world and decided that maybe it's just an evil world out there. We rescued her in Davao Port 2 years later. The same girl I was with when I was 13, campaigning for the rights of children, we rescued her in Davao Port. We convinced her to stay and become a scholar. We're going to pay for your education. We're going to give you like a nursing course if you want. Just don't go. We confiscated her passport. And then we find out she's now in Japan. How do you deal with such difficulty? And that's not all. My family has been through hell and back. We've been accused of kidnapping. We've been accused of stealing money from our donors. We've been slandered in media. Our social workers have been accused of abducting children. And we've had people literally pointing the law against us. How do you survive those situations? Well, I'm going to demonstrate to you how we survive those situations. One day, we were eating breakfast and we received a mail. Inside the mail was a bullet. There was a bullet inside the package. And when I got the bullet, I said, hey, everybody, free bullet. We should be happy, right? Not everyone gets a free bullet. That's the way we treat these situations. Because we knew that if we were going to die anyway, then we would have died for a noble cause. But it's not strategic for traffickers to kill us, because then they'd have more enemies. We knew it wasn't in their business model, so we weren't really afraid, you know. But what we believed is that if we are going to die this way, that's a pretty darn good way to die, considering that we live in a day and age when very few noble causes are worth dying for. And if I'm going to die because I was saving people from these things, fair enough. But it's much harder to keep on living. So it's very hard, our battle that we're fighting. And we knew that alone we couldn't fight this. It's a $13 billion industry, or even more, estimates are shady. Only behind guns and drugs, it's one of the richest things that you can do in your life. Please don't do it. But it's a very lucrative business, right? We knew we couldn't do it alone. So we enlisted an army. We got young people, the indigenous tribes. We got them to become fighters of human trafficking. So ordinary young people like you, they're enlisting to become fighters against this cause. And when we interview them and ask them, why are you doing this? They say, well, it's making me happy. It's making me fulfilled. It's making me happy that Filipinos are no longer going to be treated as slaves. Like, no longer will you have brothels in the middle of war-torn Ivory Coast named Mabuhay and Texmate. No longer will we be treated as second-class citizens who are enslaved by people everywhere we go. Which means we can also find happiness elsewhere without the threat of being exploited by anyone else. And that's where my source of happiness comes from. Not only like these people, but also the victims themselves. Some victims we've had, they've been exploited at a very young age. Fairly recently, CNN featured three of our victims from Cebu who were forced into child pornography at the age of 8. At the age of 12, they were able to get the guy convicted in the United States, which allowed for the #1 greatest crackdown on any US website of exploiters of children in the history of the FBI. And when that happened, no award or money is going to replace the amount of happiness or fulfillment it could give an individual. So, if you want to join, it's fairly easy. Search iFight on Facebook. If you suspect that someone in your plane, in your ship, or in your bus is being trafficked, halimbawa, you have a group of people and there are a lot of them, and they seem to be suspiciously not knowledgeable of where they're going, if it looks like they have fake documents, if they don't even speak the same language, if you ask them who's your employer and they don't know, you can always anonymously call 1343. That's the government hotline. If you want to know more, you can visit our website. But that's not really the point of my entire speech. The question is, through adversity, how do you become happy? So, 5 things. Number 1, try to be grateful. It's hard when life gets tough, and life inevitably becomes tough, right? I mean, as mortals, we're gonna lose people. We're gonna get sick. We're gonna face bad times. Try to find something to be grateful for every day. If a 4-year-old kid can find something grateful in a prison camp in the middle of the martial law with no prospect of the future, I'm pretty sure you can find something to be grateful for every day. Second, find your passion. Your passion is not something you will die for. Your passion is something you will live for. That makes you happy to wake up every day. If you don't find it, search for it. If it's not coming to you, look for it. Second, change what you can change. And please be ambitious with the change that you want to do. I mean, you only have one lifetime. You only have so many years, so many minutes, and you don't know when it's going to end. Start making a difference now. Find a difference that you can make in society. Most psychologists would tell you that actually thinking about whether or not you're happy makes you unhappy. Try it. Start thinking, am I happy? And you start thinking about negative things about why you're unhappy. But reverse the question and ask, am I making others happy? And then you will start feeling happiness. Especially like when I see a child who doesn't even remember her own name, start talking and interacting and dancing for the first time. That's a happiness that I couldn't find in riches or popularity or fame or kapugian. Although, okay naman yun. And then, most importantly, accept realities you can't change. We had to deal with people we can't rescue. And that's thousands of them. We have to deal with corruption on a day in and day out basis. Some realities of life are harsh, but they're just factual. And there's not much you can do about them. Some realities include, you will lose people. That's part of life. Either by death, betrayal, or neglect, you will lose people. Deal with it. You can't save everyone. That's a reality of life. You can't win every battle. That's a reality of life. And someone somewhere is always better than you. Deal with it and move on with your life. And go back to number 3, change what you can change. And last, laugh at stuff. If you can't laugh at stuff, laugh at people. Well, you're already given some tools of laughter, so that should be pretty easy. The recently deceased Nelson Mandela, considered one of the greatest pioneers of the world, his best friends know him for one thing, his sense of humor. He spent 27 years in prison, And every day he would look out the window and find something funny. There's always something funny. If there's nothing funny, you're funny. Figure it out, right? And you will live a happy life. My wish is that you find your passion, you find something not to die for, but something to live for. Thank you.